the reasons we might have ended up realizing that spirituality and religion don't necessarily conflict with science. There's a great metaphor I like to use. I'm not sure where it originated, but I heard it from Jordan Peterson. He talks about the fact that what science, if you were standing in a field, just a vast open field, science would do an amazing job of describing every single part of that field. It could give you every single fact about everything in front of you, but it wouldn't tell you anything about how to go through the field. And that's where the spiritual layer is. It's the map. So where science tells us what the world is made out of, it doesn't necessarily tell us how to interact with the world in a manner where we can find meaning, where we can be successful on our own terms, where we can have a life worth living.
Well, isn't that what Sam Harris sort of tries to do with science? He says, well, we can do that with science if we define our goal and we set up a certain set of constraints. For example, the field is this way, and we want to reach this goal. You know, maybe there's a crop of corn on the other side of the field that we want to reach, and we can say, okay, given the constraints of the field and our goal to reach the crops, what set of circumstances must exist for us to get to the other side? How must our muscles move? How must our emotions be set up so that we can get to the other side?
Yeah, but there are parts that can't be answered by science because science limits itself strictly to falsifiable questions. It's a tool that has a specific use.
Sure, yeah.
And it can't be applied to everything.
I think science I see science as being a beautiful, beautiful foundation for thinking about really, really incredible things. And I think thinking about those really, really incredible things leads to a lot of the spiritual stuff that we talk about. For me, the reason why I study physics is because of exactly that. I think the sort of language that you work with, or just talking about stars and talking about space and thinking about things and thinking about what I'm made of, and as you go deeper and deeper down, just that act of constantly questioning what is around me, what is the world made of. When you're thinking about that all the time, I find it's pretty inevitable. And when you're constantly experiencing the awe and amazement that comes with realizing something new and incredible, like, you know, quasars, there are these giant black holes that are millions of times as massive as our sun, with huge clouds of dust swirling about them, generating so much energy that the light of these things drowns out entire galaxies. That stuff is incredible, and it taps you into this feeling of awe and realization and all that. And I think science can do that. But what you do with that information, what you do with the awe, and if you get hooked and start saying, I want to pursue that I do think requires more than that. Requires something on your own that isn't contained but within the equations and models that science hands you.
But I would argue that if you have a goal in mind, right, we want to, well, who knows, right? It could be any goal. If I can set a goal for myself, I want to lose 10 pounds. As soon as I have that goal in place, then I can use science to get me to that goal. What is my physiology doing? What is the impact of the food that I'm eating and the exercise that I'm doing, and how will all of those factors contribute to my losing 10 pounds?
But
yeah, well, you're asking falsifiable questions.
yeah,
And that's in the domain of science.
What is the goal?
What if you have a problem that's like, how do you be happy? How do you live a meaningful, fulfilled life? Science can't answer that because it's not a falsifiable.
It can help. It can tell you
question.
get good sleep, exercise, all things like that. There's a lot that it can achieve.
It's the foundation.
But there's some deeper stuff that I think the modeling that religion or spirituality provides can be an incredibly effective, really effective tool towards helping people answer those questions, whatever they are.
And I think it's because they're non-falsifiable because they're more personal things. They're based off your experience. They're based off of how you're physiologically set up. And they're very fuzzy general truths, like at least like religious or spiritual truths are. And they don't necessarily work for everybody. You have to have your own personal truths and you don't want to push those personal truths on anybody else because they might not fit their experience.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to stick with Blake's point, right? So you said science can tell me how to lose 10 pounds and make my life better. But that's where you need to go back to where you decided to have that goal in itself. The value structure, which looks upon the facts. So you found facts that say if you weigh less, your chances, you have a higher probability of living longer. That fact in itself doesn't necessarily mean that your life will be better. However, if you have a value structure that looks at that fact and perceives living longer as being better, then inevitably you have to start with the value structure. And a big part of you had mentioned Sam Harris. A big part of their contention was Jordan Peterson would keep asking Sam Harris, because Sam would say that maximizing well-being is a fact, right? Like that's a fact in itself that we know is good, and we can use that. What's the word he uses? He says that fact in itself is good in essence, and that's enough to lead us in the direction we need to go. However, and Jordan Peterson would ask him a lot about, but what about the value structure that looks at that fact and decides that that is the optimal fact? Yeah. But even if you don't fight the necessary, without even focusing on the value structure part, let's say your goal is to maximize well-being, and there's a set of facts that meet that goal. Where it becomes tricky, especially in the world of facts and science, is let's say you have a small town and you're the sheriff of that small town, and one day someone gets murdered. The next day a stranger comes to town, and everyone is very suspicious. By the middle of the night, there's 60 people outside of this dude's door with pitchforks and torches. And now, as the sheriff, would you be maximizing the well-being of the town by letting them kill the stranger who did nothing wrong? Or would it be maximizing well-being to save this one person on the moral principles? And technically, if you just want to maximize well-being factually, you'll let them kill the guy, because then you're not going to have to fight them. They won't be fighting each other. The town is not going to have any harm done to it. Just this one stranger.
And everybody feels better. They feel like they've
the problem solved.
Fixed it.
Yeah, they won't think about it anymore.
I think what we're getting at is that science does not deal in value. You can say, I'm going to set up that I value something like losing weight, and science can tell you how to go out and do that. But science does not in itself really assign value to these different things. You need to start off coming from a place of, I believe there's value in well-being. And people might take that in very different directions. I believe that there's value in me in experiencing my well-being. I believe there's value in improving society's well-being. Some people might say having well-being is less important than reducing suffering. Or how do we define well-being and all that? But you need to start figuring those things out before you can before I think the scientific process becomes meaningful. It needs to be directed, or let me specify, in the context of sort of spiritual, personal well-being and development and all that. You need to develop that value system before you can use the scientific machine, it's a set of tools to start trying to answer that question.